Hello people, hope you've had a good summer, autumn or whatever it is you're in at the moment. I guess Matt down under, you're going to be coming into the heat of the summer just now. A shout to my friend Philip down in a glorious island just off the Greek mainland, who will be languidly swimming around in the sea, spearing whatever he can get his hands on. I've just come back from holiday, had a little bit of time away in the sunshine for a change, get away from the abject misery of Scotland and the dreich rain, wind and perpetual misery of it all. Did a little bit of scuba diving, that was great, and met up with some old friends, an old biker pal who has made something of himself and travelled around the world and single-handedly sailed across the Atlantic and all this kind of stuff. So quite a few good stories to be had with that chap. Back home again. I've kind of been remiss with this podcast. I haven't been thinking of various subjects or whatever I could talk about or people I could be talking to, so I need to be a bit more proactive with that. One of the difficulties that I have here is the internet is really, really bad. So it takes me the best part of a day, if I'm lucky, just to upload audio. So at this stage I'm unable to do anything as ambitious as live moving pictures with living human beings. On the moor behind us, they've erected a gigantic Eye of Sauron, which has not yet got its accoutrements attached, but that's going to be beaming down some kind of G technology at some point, which I'm probably the only person here who doesn't really embrace that and think it's a wonderful thing, but it'll speed things up, although I'm going to have to see how our bees relate to it, because it's very possible that it can disturb their flight patterns and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a real thing rather than just another one of those kooky conspiracy theories that I keep coming up with and falling into. So we'll see. In the future that may happen. At this point, it's going to be a case of just doing chats and observations and the occasional interview with people at this kind of level. So bear with us. I'm learning as I go along, and hope to be able to improve this whole thing and get a sort of get a platform where us lot can have a little bit of a to and fro, I don't think there's many places. I think, if you're looking for somewhere on the internet where people of a like mind can get together and chat and bullshit about whatever their subject happens to be, you'll find plenty, but perhaps the niche of the particular kind of music scene background and stuff like that a lot of us come from, there's not many people that have moved outside that cosy little club or been pushed outside it. And I know that there's a lot of you out there who have done your own journey and kind of found yourself on the outside now, not through wanting to be so, but really because it takes a kind of precarious moral balancing act to be able to pretend that you're okay with everything as it goes on at the moment. And the people that are more true to themselves, they can't really put up with that. So salute to all of yous. Keep on doing your journey. Keep on realising that there's plenty of other people out there that are doing something similar, and they're making their own way, and we're all learning as we go along how to make and create our own reality, really, in a world which is increasingly hostile to the individual and the expression of that individualism, and we'll find any way that it can to clamp down on that. Books, I have been reading quite a bit over this summer time. Most recently I picked up Graham Hancock's Supernatural, which I hadn't heard of before, to be honest. And a very interesting read, and there are a few observations in there which I kind of it sparked some ideas. He kind of like traces down the similarities between these Paleolithic cave paintings from all different cultures all over the world, and looking at the similarities of them, and also the most recent interpretation of those, which has kind of thrown all of the previous ideas out of the window. and it seems to be that what ties these together is the psychedelic experience and the shamanic sort of journey. So people finding places for ritual and being able to teach one another what had happened within their vision quests and all the rest of it. So that's fascinating. And he goes on to tie this into the normal sort of Jacques Vallée territory of fairy lore, and then on to UFO abductions and all the rest of it, saying that these things have, as we know, changed their faces throughout time. So the phenomenon itself tends to reflect the social and cultural environment of the people that are interacting with it, as though it itself is very malleable, perhaps, or if it's intelligent in itself, it conforms itself to our particular standard of the time. He does go on, though. There's something which I think he didn't really explore fully, and he talks about the similarity of stories between the fairy folk and the UFO phenomenon and other kind of cultural mythical motifs. The abduction and the breeding program, for want of a better word, and what he speculates about that, because you often find that people are taken into the fairy hills, and there's you have the image of the village midwife who will be woken in the middle of the night by a tap on the door, and a wee man will appear, or a wee woman or whatever, and take them out to the fairy place to be able to assist in the rearing of the children there, and then they will be returned home, or in some instances disappear forever. The same thing happens within the UFO literature as well, whereby people are taken onto spaceships or whatever they think it is, and they are given children to nurse or to suckle, and sometimes told that they are the results of their own sexual activity with the so-called aliens on other occasions and other abductions. Now, what Hancock goes into here, he says that what it appears to him to be is that there is a desire on the part of the phenomenon to establish this breeding program for their own benefit, and that they're trying to improve themselves, and thereby that's how they interact in different ways with us through different cycles of history. But I think there's something else here, and I think that what we're seeing in the breeding program is not that they're trying to improve their own stock, but that they're in fact trying to find a hybrid human and entity which is able to survive within the earthly environment. Because at present you find that a lot of these Men in Black stories and some of these other more familiar abduction or manifestation stories, they only seem to be able to manage to stay within this atmosphere for a very limited amount of time, quite uncomfortable here, unfamiliar with how to behave socially, also how to nourish themselves, food and drink and all the rest of it. So my supposition on that all is really that there may be something going on that level which is trying to get as close as it can to the human experience, because I think firmly these days that this is the place here and now. This is not a place that you reject in that kind of like traditional interpretation of Christian Gnosticism, as they would have put it. That this is the real deal here and now. This is a life. This is something unique in this corner of the multiverse or whatever, and that there are other entities that are not able to experience it fully in the flesh, mainly because they're not flesh and blood in that sense. They're able to manifest for a limited amount of time. But my thoughts, along with people like John Keel, are that whatever they are, they live at a different vibrational density rate than us, and you can facilitate an interaction with that through the use of psychedelics, which change your frequency really in relation to your brain signals, and perhaps something deep within the DNA as well, which is switched on in these experiences, and allows a channel to be opened. So yeah, so it's that thing again, are we dealing with what are traditionally in the Western context called demons, or is it something else? I tend to lean toward John Lash and his view that we're dealing with the archontic entities, which is basically it's a byproduct of the act of creation itself, and the conscious manifestation of the earth itself as a living sentient being, because that was not something which was really on the cards. It was an act which didn't have authority, a full authority to it. It produced a byproduct, which was this other force in our immediate vicinity, which is within the 7 main planetary bodies around us, which has traditionally tried to jealously get part of that human experience itself. So it is related to us, but it's also tricky. It manifests in the trickster and in the ubiquitous messengers of deception. Other books, let me see, rereading through the 15th anniversary edition of Not in His Image, really enjoying that, kind of a bit of a refresher for me. I went through a stage of reading Savitri Devi, The Lightning and the Sun. I read a bit of Miguel Serrano, and these are kind of like forbidden authors. So, of course, I'm going to go and have a dip into those and find out what they have to say. I can respect somebody like Savitri Devi, but her perception of a particular historical individual is it's very mythological. It's very iconic. It's something that I can't see, or I can't fit into at this point. I can respect some aspects of that, but not necessarily the whole thing just yet. Serrano, I found, first of all, it's almost impenetrable, and it's almost like he's just rambling on all the time. But there's some really brilliant little nuggets of information there, which I didn't know about at all, I'd never heard of before in my life. And that is in the book called The Golden Thread. So a good read, actually, a really good read. I was quite happy with that. I read his book on Nietzsche and Jung, and meetings with those two, and philosophical musings and all the rest of it. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. Most recently, I've spent a small fortune, in my mind anyway, it's about $65 or so, to get the new book by E. Michael Jones, and it's called The Holocaust Narrative. I'm looking forward to getting hold of that, because that guy he's a heavy hitter. He's getting old now, so I'm a bit concerned for him, because he's one of the few people who's able to elaborate and very confidently expand on the subject matter, and the retention he has for names and places and dates and things like that is something that a dumbass like me could only sort of hope to have in an entire lifetime of reading and speculation and talking and debate. But I'm looking forward to that book, because he will, for the first time, I think, really put into, not necessarily the mainstream, but he'll put into the cultural consciousness a book which should deal with this very, very difficult, tricky issue. Something, as for myself, I've been trying to find space, time, and really the sort of peace of mind to sit down and address this, because I'm in a position now where I'm able to debate, talk, argue this subject particularly quite well, I think, and I'm happy to do so. But the problem with it is that I'm really conscious about not really wanting to hurt people, because I can see that there are people that are deeply invested in this whole thing who act completely. They lose their mind as soon as you go anywhere near it. So it's so difficult to get them to have a look and see the things that I'm seeing, or that I guess a lot of you are seeing as well. And a lot of you have got through it, and it's kind of like you're over it now. You understand what happened, what didn't happen, and the consequences of that. But I think what I was trying to stress to some of the friends I've been in touch with when I've been talking about this matter with email as well is the feeling that until and unless this matter is addressed properly in an adult way, and everybody gets to be involved in this debate and this talk without the threat of being shut down, being imprisoned, being silenced, having your living taken away from you just for merely hinting around the edges of it. We need to get past that and put these things on the table, because there are so many discrepancies and problems that I think the net result of that really is that we live in it's like an altered timeline. It's like so many things have been allowed to happen because of this narrative sitting at the heart of the issue itself, and being almost like the central reference point for anything morally within our political, social sphere over the past 70 or 80 years. It's always the big thing which is brought up and shaken like a stick in front of anybody that says anything, because that is the logical consequence of people like you saying those things. It's a really, really important issue that until we get through this all together, Gentiles and Jews alike, until we do that, we're not going to be able to move on socially. We're not going to be able to be full grown-ups together, because we're not going to have an equal deck. We're not going to be able to talk to one another as equals, because on the one side you're very aware of the fact that you are stifled and there is a big threat over you if you go anywhere near this, and on the other side there is almost like a need to cling to a motif that should have been shaken up and stirred about a long, long time ago, and that has been weaponized pretty much. People like E. Michael Jones. I mean, he's a Catholic. I don't know whether he's a priest, but he certainly knows his way around. So he and I would not necessarily subscribe to the same ideas in the spiritual context, but I respect and admire the guy for his tenacity and his thoroughness around a lot of these things. And of course, if you go onto the ADL site or something like that, he's going to be another enfant terrible, one of the terrible people that actually questions stuff and should be shut down immediately. So that conversation from me, I guess it's still to come at some point, but I'm trying to frame it right so that it's not just something that people switch off straight away and go into that familiar denial stage, which is not helpful. It's not helpful for anyone at all. And as I say, until we get through that, until we have the discussion, we're going to be living in the consequences of an altered timeline. So it's almost as though we took a wrong turn because we weren't straightforward and honest about certain things, and the consequences of that have led us down this kind of like weird pathway that we've gone down now, which is it's kind of covered and protected by that narrative too at the heart of it. So if you question anything about, say, the alphabet people or the other weirdnesses that are going on in the world just now, it all leads in that direction. It's like, how dare you do that? That could happen if you do that. You know what I mean? You know, it's the consequences of everything which is being falsely imposed on us in our various Western societies, and which is taking away all of the objective meanings that we used to have around how we thought and how we presented ideas. And as a consequence, words and their meanings have been changed so that everything is being purposely confused in order to be able to, in my view, to be able to create drone beings really that don't have any cultural identity left. They don't have any sense of up or down or left or right. They are, we will be just units either of productivity in the future, or if Noah Yuval Harari or whatever, if he gets his way, we will be expendable anyway. You might as well just sit at home and eat yourself stupid on corn chips and live in your virtual reality goggles. But of course, a lot of us aren't really doing that. We're trying to make lives for ourselves and trying to live in this really troubling time in the best way that we can. So don't give up hope, everybody out there. We will do what we can. What am I doing just now? Gardening, yeah. End of the year, garden produce, brilliant. It's been probably the best year that we've had for a long time. I have been struggling to grow these giant carrots, and that's not been so successful. Grew tons of garlic, did really well with staples like potatoes and all the rest of it. First time in quite a few years that there's been enough sun to get all the tomatoes ripened and of course the ubiquitous and horrendous bloody courgettes. When the first couple of them you have, they're nice, and after that it's kind of repellent, but I don't say anything about it, of course. Bees are done well. We've taken off a lot of honey. I'm going to be pressing that now because it's heather honey, and at this time of year, because they've been out on the heather, it's super viscous, so you can't spin it like you normally would. You have to actually cut the stuff out of the frames, and you need to press it out, process it through that way. I'll get a bit of the wax from that. We sell a bit of the honey. Other stuff we use all the time. Honey is like it's a superfood, brilliant for you. If you have any allergies and stuff like that, it's great because the bees tend to neutralize the pollens and stuff by having them pass through the whole system that they have in place, and you can have like a safe version of what might normally set you off hysterically sneezing and sniveling. So yeah, bees are great. Get bees, or if you're a fool like me, get bees and then find out that you were highly allergic to them and go to the hospital a couple of times. But after that, I've been trying to bear with it. I had a few stings and just sit down and watch the limbs grow to spectacular cartoon size. This last year, I got stung on both ears 1 week after the other, and I ended up looking like some, I don't know, it's insane Sean McGowan type of creature, which was amusing for the wife, but not so much for me. Anyway, people, as I say, hang on in there. I will try and do another interview spot soon. I love talking with Pete, and I love talking with Matt, and there are other people out there. As I say, I'm just trying to set time aside, shuffle the papers, find out what needs to be done. And if you've got suggestions, ideas, if you've got books you're reading just now, you want to talk about stuff that you think is important for other people to hear, just write it down or get in touch. All right. Be good to each other, and speak to you soon.